Hello everyone and welcome back to another Voiceflow University tutorial. My name is Braden and today we're going to be going over the interaction block, also known as the intent block. Now this is one of the newer blocks in Voiceflow, at least at the time of recording. So let's dive right in. So the interaction block can be found in the advanced section of our blocks menu, and you can see it's right here, and we can pull it out, and there it is. From a very high level, the interaction block is like a really advanced choice block mixed with a capture block. And essentially what it allows you to do is to be able to pick apart individual parts of a sentence that the user says and being able to store those parts of the sentence into variables. Now, how this really gets special is you can say, for example, "Hello, Alexa, my name is Braden from Seattle." And you'll be able to capture their name and capture their city by predefining the parts of the sentence that you want to capture into a variable. This becomes really powerful when you're building complex skills, which use a lot of personalization, such as saving the user's intentions, as well as saving, their name or their city or, any sort of complex sentence structure. But we're going to be going over an easy example today where we are going to have the user say just their name and their city in a single sentence, and we'll capture those into variables and then say it back to them. So let's dive right in. First off, let's pose the question to our user, and we'll do that using a speak block. So I'll pull that out, and we'll say, "Hello there. What is your name, followed by the city you live in?" Okay, and now we want to have our interaction block. So let's pull that back out. And let's connect these together. Okay, so you'll see on the right menu here, we have slots, we have intents, and we have choices. The best way to think of the interaction block is slots are the smallest pieces. They're essentially the small components that go into intents, which are a sentence, and choice is choosing which sentence you want the user to say. So let's take a step back, and the first thing we want to do is think about, okay, what are we trying to capture from the user? We want to know their name and we want to know their city. So we're going to create slots for those two types of information that we want to get from the user. So let's create two slots. So we have slot 1 and we have slot 2, and we can rename these to name and city. Okay, so the first thing you'll see here is you'll have select slot type. And so Amazon has predefined hundreds of different types of information that you can capture from users, from 4-digit numbers to artists, animals, airports, really anything you can think of. Amazon generally has a slot type for it. And essentially what that means is when the user says something that's supposed to go into a slot, if you've predefined it to be an airline or an airport, it's going to have a heavy bias towards forcing what the user says into one of those slot types because you've predefined it. So rather than just hoping that Alexa hears the user properly and says the correct thing, you can now force their responses into slots if you know it's going to be that kind of response. Now that might be a lot to take in at once. That's how slots work. But for right now, all you need to know is whatever type of information you are trying to capture, you can select the slot type that corresponds to it. So for city, we want to type in city, and we'll do Amazon US city as our slot type. Now in slot type content examples, you really only need to worry about this if you are doing custom slots, but that is a topic for another video. This is just sort of an intro. So we are done this slot now, and we can actually close this up. And now for the name slot, we want to select name. So we'll do US first name, and now we are done that slot type. Great, so we have our two slots. So now we want to go into intents, and we want to add an intent. Now, an intent is the sentence that the user is going to say. So we're going to say name and city. This is the type of information we're trying to capture from the user. And so in enter user reply, we are going to add all the different variations that we think might happen when the user says, their name and their city. So the first variation would be, "Hi, my name," my square bracket, and we want to put the slot in for name. So you'll see all the different slots you have pop up, and you can start typing and it will autocomplete to find the slot you want. My name, hi, my name is, what's that up there? Is name, and my city is city. Okay, so that's our first example. Now, for those who are a little bit more technical with Alexa, you'll know that these are utterances. Another term they often go by is synonyms, but for right now, yeah, you can see on our screen there we have enter synonyms. And so now we want to enter as many different variations as we can think of to make sure that Alexa is really sort of prepared to capture the user sentence and store the information in the slot. So say I am name from name, or from city. Enter that one. We'll say just the name from city, and even we'll just have name and city. Okay, so we have a bunch of different variations of the way the user might give Alexa their name and city. So now we have our intent is done. So name and city. Now in choices, just like a choice block, you can see we can add multiple choices. And very similar to a choice block, if the user says the intent that matches up with, if the user says the choice which matches up with the correct intent. So for example, if the user says anything that relates to name and city, it will come down this number one path. If we had a different intent, like let's say, for example, a help intent in the number two slot, it would come out of this port. But for right now, we are only going to have one intent since we are only looking for name and city. But you can do sort of more choice structures where you can have multiple different intents, and depending on what the user says, they will go down a different path. But for right now, we're just going to have one path. Okay, and so what we want to say to the user is, hi, I forgot one key point. We need to create variables. So I actually already have a variable for username and city, but I'm going to create them again, city and name. Okay. Now we're going to go into our interaction block, and we need to select the intent, so name and city intent. And now you'll see there's this new section called slot mapping. And what slot mapping allows us to do is to pick which slot goes into which variable. So now we have a variable on our left here for city and name. So we want to add a variable mapping for name. So we want the name slot to go into the name variable, and we want the city slot to go into the city variable. Okay, so now when the user says the sentence, it will capture what they say into a slot and then transfer that into a variable that we can use later. So now in our speak block, we'll say, hi, name from city. It is very nice to meet you. You can imagine you could even do more complex things like an if block or a bunch of logic to say, if the user's in Seattle, then say this, et cetera, et cetera. That's where the power of slots really comes in. Cool. So let's hook this up. Now you might be wondering what the else is. Very similar to many other types of blocks. The else block will get chosen if it does not hit any of your intents, then the else selection will be hit. So let's do this, and we'll say, oops. Please say your name followed by the city you live in. Okay, so if the user does not say the name, city intent, or any of the other intents we have, it will hit the else port. Great. Okay, so our everything is all set up. So let's save, and let's upload to Alexa. Now you are going to notice that uploading is going to be a little bit longer than it normally would. And this is simply because now you're actually updating what's called the interaction model. And that will be on your Alexa developer console. Normally with Voiceflow, as you guys know, it takes only a couple seconds, but now it's going to be a little bit longer. Okay, so let's test it. So I have my device here. Computer, open Voiceflow University.
Hello there. What is your name, followed by the city you live in?
Braden from Seattle.
Hi, Braden from Seattle. It is very nice to meet you.
And there you go. So Alexa actually picked out the two different slots and stored it in a variable. And now we can use those variables within the rest of our project. And that's the power of the interaction block. It allows you to pick apart user sentences and have a lot more personalization within your Alexa skills. Perfect. If you have any questions, you're always free to message us in the little bottom right corner here of your Voiceflow screen. This is our intercom. And otherwise, I will see you guys in future videos.